like to call to order the September 6th regular meeting for the Calaveras Council of Governments. First thing we'd like to do is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested party may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. Council.
I would like to know if Justin really did show up at 5:32 a.m.
So you're asking for the minutes to be pulled.
I would think if he showed up at 5:32 p.m., it should state that.
I bet the door was locked.
Okay. Any other items from the council? We have some staff.
Y'all pull item 2D.
Interested public?
No. Just the agenda. Somebody took mine.
Oh, okay. Items 2A, B, and C are available to be consent agenda items approved at one time without further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Councilmember Tofanelli, you'd like to have the minutes reflect a 5:32 p.m. arrival time for
Yes.
Catalano. Any other amendments to the minutes? Okay. And item 2D, the active transportation program augmentation. Ms. Collins.
Sure, I just pulled this to quickly congratulate the city. We just got news that the city was awarded, or recommended to be awarded, at the October CTC meeting for $1.9 million for construction for sidewalks on Highway 49. So I think, this is a huge accomplishment. We've discussed this a lot through the past couple of years, how the ATP is an extremely competitive and difficult program for us to compete statewide. And so I just want to say congratulations, and it's really attributable to all the planning that you guys are doing and setting up projects for shovel-ready projects. So I think you see the results of that through this grant award. And I don't see Dave, but he might have an update during his staff update.
And that's as a result of SB 1.
Yes, yeah, the new influx of funding.
It's nice to see some of that money coming back locally. With any further comments on the two items that were pulled, the minutes and/or the item 2D? Do we have a motion to approve items 1 and 2D of consent?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Mudity, seconded by Councilmember Catalano. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our first item on the regular agenda is public comment. Public comment is limited to 5 minutes per person and will be limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Good evening. Elizabeth Thompson, Executive Director for Common Ground Senior Services. Common Ground has been awarded a Caltrans 5310 grant for mobility management project in the amount of $293,000. This is for 3 years. The goal of the project is to improve services for those that are transit dependent. Steps in accomplishing these goals are build coordination among existing transportation providers, assist in expanding current volunteer drivers program, distribution of materials relating to transportation, assisting in conducting travel training, research and explore opportunities to develop a one-stop call center for dissemination of available transportation options, and working with existing transportation providers to address barriers that have been identified and identify additional barriers. This funding provides the county the opportunity to develop ways to better meet the needs of those that are transit dependent and coordinate with providers whose services may not be fully utilized. In an effort to achieve this, it will take collaboration among the many stakeholders, and that's all of us here. Common Ground sees this funding as a way to create a centralized coordination for existing resources that will result in greater visibility for transportation services and reduce consumer confusion on how to access services. Please note that this funding cannot be utilized for operations of Common Ground's transportation program, the Silver Streak program we have. Common Ground staff are looking forward to working with COG, public transit, and other transportation providers over the next 3 years to build an integrated transit system that meets the needs of the citizens of our county. This will also have an effect on securing funds for future mobility projects, such as a centralized call center, developing a dial-a-ride program, and a one central location for determining eligibility for riders, in addition to investigating more modern concepts of mobility management. So at this point in time, I would just like to let you know that we're here, and the mobility management dollars that the grant that we receive is to benefit the county. And I want to assure you that it's going to benefit the county. It's not a Common Ground project or anything like that. It's a county project. And that's why we applied for it, because we really believe in this program and what we can do together as stakeholders, county, other providers, and churches, and all the different entities around the county that can assist us with this. So we're really, really looking forward to it and excited that we were granted this funds to be able to do what we wanted to do a few years ago. So with that, it's just, again, to keep us in mind if you have any thoughts about transportation issues, transportation ideas that come up, and let's talk together, because that's the only way we're going to make things happen, is if we're on the same page, if we communicate. So that's my goal, and that's my desire, and that's my wish for our county, is that everybody gets to have a say in how transportation looks in our county. Thank you.
Congratulations. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none. Item number 4. The presentation and discussion on the 2018 RTIP Regional Transportation Improvement Program funding strategy options. Ms. Collins.
Hey, good evening, council. I included, I think, after the fact, a little PowerPoint presentation just to help me, walk through this discussion with you. The State Transportation Improvement Program is a 5-year capital improvement program for transportation projects, and it's updated every 2 years. So I thought, since we do have some new council members and, me as a new executive director of the COG, this would be a good opportunity to kind of start this discussion and process early with you, and kind of discuss some of the issues and opportunities through the STIP cycle, to get kind of some initial feedback from you. The STIP is funded through the price-based excise tax, which makes up, a portion of the gas tax you pay at the pump. So because it's influenced by gas prices and the fuel being consumed, it's, fluctuates quite significantly, which we saw during the last STIP cycle. And this is a core function of regional transportation planning agencies, so it's a core function of what the COG does. The RTIP is, developed by the regions. So ours is the Regional Transportation Improvement Program that we develop, and then the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program is developed by Caltrans. So they get 25% of the STIP funds, and then the regions, it's allocated amongst the regions, 75% of the remaining funds. So I'll use, STIP and RTIP interchangeably, but it's, for us, I'm just talking about our RTIP and our portion of the funds. So quickly, just describing how the STIP programming works. It's a 5-year plan, updated every 2 years. So kind of looking back at the previous STIP cycle for 2016, in fiscal year 16-17, we planned out 5 years. And then for this STIP cycle, then we add 2 new years of programming. So now we're going to be starting in 18-19 and programming out 5 years. So this is the 2018 STIP that we'll be working on in the next few months. And then just to note too, with each cycle, we hope to have additional capacity for those outer 2 years. What happened in the last STIP cycle, hitting the peak of the transportation funding crisis, with fuel excise taxes being reduced, we went from a 0 capacity STIP, which means we had no additional capacity in that 5 years of programming, to negative capacity, which means the CTC, took $1.5 million out of our region's capacity. So that definitely significantly impacted what happened during the last STIP cycle and our programming strategy with Wagon Trail. So right here is kind of going over the current and CTC adopted 2016 STIC programming. And really, Wagon Trail has been our region's #1 priority through the last several STIP cycles. The strategy adopted by the COG board in 2014 and also carried forward in 2016 is to secure our RIP shares in the years needed to deliver a tangible portion of the Wagon Trail project while maintaining a position to realize construction of the entire corridor in future funding cycles. So really, Wagon Trail is a very difficult project for our region because we have very limited capacity funding-wise that comes into our region. The last estimate for the Wagon Trail project is about $78 million for the entire corridor. And as you can see, the money we bring in through regional funds, through the STIP process, is just keeping up with inflation at this point. So, part of our strategy is not only segmenting the Wagon Trail project into more digestible pieces of projects that can kind of stand on their own, but also to kind of use our regional funds as leveraging to get state and federal funding, and working with Caltrans and our partners to really work hard to leverage those funds. So as you can see, I got off on a tangent, but in the last STIP, we were able to program $2.46 million for the whole corridor, for the western segment of the Wagon Trail project in 17-18, which we're in now and beginning to program now. Previous commitments and successes. So again, like I said, although we have limited funding capacity to do this project on our own, during the last STIP cycle, like I just mentioned, we were able to program 2.6 for PS&E for the western segment. We were also able to program $1.3 million for right-of-way for the western segment in 1920. And then we were also able to program $1.3 million in construction in 2021. Another success is that, we worked hard in working with Caltrans and CTC to program Calaveras RTIP funds as state-only funds, which, the STIP is a combination of federal and state funds. What this does is allows us to leverage additional funding, and what that means is, you can't use federal funds as a match for federal funds. So this allows us to go after federal grant funding and using that state money, saying, okay, look, we're going to put up 20% and we're only asking for, this percentage of federal funds. And that looks really good in grant applications.
Does SB1 play into any of this?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah. So the reason we actually have capacity in this STIP cycle is because of Senate Bill 1. Which stabilized, it didn't add money to the STIP, but it stabilized the STIP, and then also tied the excise tax to inflation to keep up with inflation. Another success is that Caltrans District 10 went after what they're calling pilot funds under their SHOP program, 10.35 million, and they were awarded that from headquarters. And this is a really unique because usually they don't blend SHOP funds with any other type of funding source. So Caltrans District 10, I think this is really a show for their support for this project. They went out there on their own to get this additional funding. So I think that's a huge success in this last cycle, and really attributable to, our past executive director's work in the partnership with Caltrans. Another success is working with the county to commit $1.5 million in county RIM funds towards construction. And then the huge success of the Wagon Trail project is completion of what they call project approval and environmental documentation of the entire Wagon Trail project. So that really allows us to then be able to look at different segments. Now we've completed environmental for the whole project, which is sometimes, when you're going after funds for environmental, it's difficult because the timing on that for a project like this is always unknown. So now we have a shovel-ready project, and that's a lot easier to go after funding for that. Forgot I'm the clicker. Some challenges. As stated, the latest estimate for Wagon Trail project is about $78 million. With approximately $17 million of STIP, SHOP, and RIM funds, we still have a quite significant shortfall for construction of entire Wagon Trail project. So this is where the segmentation comes in handy, and we can start kind of parceling this out of where are our priorities. And in the past, the western segment has been the priority because that's where the majority of the accidents have been concentrated, and that's where the local community has voiced their biggest concerns. So as you can see in this chart, really, we're almost there on the western segment. And by almost there, I mean we're about $14 million short of funding the construction for that middle segment of the western segment. I'm using segment a lot. But looking at, where are issues and challenges? But looking at our 2018 STIP, we have new capacity coming into the region. Our estimate that was approved by CTC in August is about $4.7 million available to us. That's new money to program new phases or new projects. They have this advanced project development element, which hasn't been in the STIP since 2002 because of unknown funding levels. We have $722,000 available that we can borrow against our future shares to begin project development of other projects, which means preliminary engineering, environmental design. The issue in our region right now is we have no projects prepared or ready to be added to the STIP, and that means, to be eligible to get STIP funded, the project needs to have a project study report. And we are, making headway on several projects in the region to get them to that point. Angels Camp 449 Gateway Corridor, we're working on a PSR right now for that. And then there's several, planning projects we've done in San Andreas and other areas of the county where we can then move forward with a PSR and prepare them for future STIP cycles. So I think, although this isn't something we can take advantage of as a region during this cycle, it's definitely something to be preparing for and looking forward to in our next cycle. One other thing to think about is the Agency Transportation Improvement Program, which is the Caltrans ITIP. They submitted $19 million request for the Wagon Trail project for construction. I've been told this program is extremely competitive. The Caltrans, I think, District 10 submitted 12 projects or so, and they're, I think, worth $200 and something million, and then statewide there's only $120 million in this pot. So I think the chances are quite slim of Wagon Trail being, getting approved for that funding, but I think this is just a show of support, again, from the district, and that this is also a priority of theirs. So how do we move forward? I think that looking at our past commitments and successes along with this new capacity in this tip cycle provides us an opportunity and potential to position the Wagon Trail project for a constructible phase of the western segment in fiscal year 2021. And looking to leverage, or identify a segment within our funding constraints. So I think we have several avenues we need to continue to pursue. I wasn't prepared at this meeting to bring you specific options for you to say, no, let's throw Wagon Trail out the window, or no, let's, add this project, or no, let's fund this particular segment. I need a little bit more time to work with Caltrans District 10 staff to define, and also, our project team to define constructible segments based on our most recent estimates of funding. Also, most recent cost estimates. Working with Caltrans, they're providing some more recent cost estimates for right-of-way, which are looking like they're coming out a little bit higher. So I'd just like an opportunity to continue to look at these opportunities, also opportunities for partnership with regional partners, and looking at Caltrans to see if there's potential to look at, additional SB1 funds that are funneling through Caltrans, other federal funds to see if those might be feasible for Wagon Trail, so that I can bring back to you a table of options at the October meeting for us to really have a concrete plan set forth for this dip cycle.
Your reference to the money that Caltrans has requested and set aside, last October, November, when we had approved things and then found out the next month they were taking the funds away, there was some discussion then about $16 million to try to fix Pool and 4. Is that the same funds that you've referenced on the previous slide?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not following that sequence of events, but Caltrans, they went after, I think it's a somewhat competitive, their shop pilot program, the $10.3 million. So that wasn't committed funds at that time. They have to get it into their shop program. So I think there was issues with us saying, it was committed when it really wasn't committed at that time. So next steps moving forward, our RTIPs are due December 15th. So, I'm looking, having this initial discussion with you now in September. October, I'll be back to you, a presentation discussion of options to consider and direction on development of our draft RTIP. And then November, we'll bring the draft RTIP, and December will be the final RTIP submitted to CTC staff. And if the council has questions or discussion at this point.
I do have a couple questions. Talking about the partnership. Several years ago, we had money that we had to either give back or do something with, and we didn't have any shovel-ready projects at the time, so we partnered with San Joaquin County and let them leverage some of our funds. I was just wondering, when we go forward with this, if we can't explore those type of opportunities for us, for the Wagon Trail, to be able to partnership with some other COGS or whatever that's around, transportation agencies, that we can leverage their funds. They're not quite ready for a shovel-ready project, but their funds are going to either go back if they don't use them, or lend them out to another COG. So I think we should keep that in mind. I think it happens quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, one of the options that I'm kind of discussing is working with regional agencies and other partners to see if there's those opportunities.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any further council comment?
Yep, I would like to make a statement. On the packet page 30, gives us a little State Route 4 Wagon Trail Realignment Project, and it gives us the purposes and project benefits. We have a few pictures on there for truck route, emergency evacuation route, scenic route. Maybe we could be a little more specific and utilize the California Freight Mobility Plan to kind of utilize their goals to leverage this project a bit because it is going to meet all of those goals. I don't know if that would help us get money or whatnot, but potentially help the project move forward. Remembering getting, I believe Tuolumne had alternative fuels, electric charging stations. Maybe we can get some of that involved in this project, and maybe we can get some funds from there. I'm not too sure how our general fund money works, but getting $13 million a year from the cannabis tax, if we could try to take a little bit of the money from that and put it into infrastructure improvements, we'd be able to utilize millions of dollars to leverage funds and possibly get matching funds. That's all I got.
Any further council comment? Any public comment? This was an informational item. Look forward to you coming back in October with some options for us to consider. Agenda item number 5, the fiscal year 2016-17 overall work program fourth quarter report. Ms. Collins. I'm sorry, Ms. Raggio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This also was an informational item. This is fiscal year 2016-17 overall work program. This is the fourth quarter rural planning assistance invoice. If you look in the attachment, expenditures were just a little over $1 million. The invoice was due to Caltrans 60 days after the end of the fiscal year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council. Is there, I have a question. Are there further invoices to be attributed to the 16-17 fiscal year above that $1 million? Because we had budgeted 1.6.
1.6 in RPA funding.
When I look at total all funds budgeted for work element, it's got 1.6. Several of them are estimated completion dates of June 18, but everything else was June 17. And the total budgeted funds were 1.6 million, but total date expenditures was only a little over 1 million. Are there any further invoices to these projects for 16-17, or does these things roll forward into 17-18?
They are reflected as carryover projects in the overall work program the council approved in June, and staff will be bringing forward overall work program amendment number 1, which will reflect all of the carryover balances from 16-17.
Thank you. Any public comment? Seeing none, this also was an informational item with no direction being requested. Item number 6. The Valley Springs Elementary School Bicycle and Pedestrian Safety Grant Development Efforts. It's an informational item. Ms. Collins.
All right, good evening. This item is just really an update on, what the COG is doing in concert with the county to address this need. I think this came up at our last meeting, and so we thought we'd just bring an informational item to you and also update you on work that we're doing with the county to address this as well. As you're aware, this project's, been a priority for funding, for COG funding, for several years, and, the project's on our regional transportation plan as, one of the top 5 bike and ped projects in the region to get funding. The county and COG applied for but wasn't awarded a Caltrans planning grant at this last cycle. The reason we were going for a planning grant is because really the only state funding for bicycle and pedestrian projects in the state is the active transportation program, and like we've discussed a lot, that's extremely competitive, and you need a lot of pre-planning and scoping work to be done to actually get funding for that project. So, but in working with the county, I know Supervisor Tofinelli and probably Mr. Kovitz can provide more information on what they're doing at the moment to address more short-term, low-cost solutions to the traffic congestion issues at the school. However, more costly capital improvements are needed to address the long-term issues. So, COG will continue to seek funding. We do have programmed in our overall work program for this year, which we always do every year, money for consultant services to apply for ATP grants because they're very technical grants and require a lot of data and a lot of pre-planning work. So we'll hire a consultant to really go work with the county and school to develop a scope, preliminary, conceptual engineering, cost estimates, and some stakeholder outreach to really develop a comprehensive and competitive ATP grant application, which is anticipated to be released in the spring. And I'll let Supervisor Tofinelli speak.
I just wanted to say a couple things about this project. This is a really real priority project. It has to do with child safety. Just a little bit of history on this. Several years ago, I don't know how most people are aware that the Jenny Lind Veterans Memorial District has built a new building there, and they're trying desperately to get it open. And this is right next door to the school. Years ago, before that new building was there, where that exists now was a parking lot. And that parking lot was a staging area for buses in the morning and the afternoon to load and unload. So it kept that traffic, bus traffic, and kids off the road. Once they built that building, they no longer had any access to having the buses in the back there out of the way. They now had to start putting the buses out on the road on Pine Street and trying to accommodate on a narrow road kids coming to school, walking with their parents dropping them off, trying to load and unload school buses. It's just been a nightmare, and this year it really is even worse because the influx of kids into the school system there, and it's a dire need. It's been a project since when I was on the board last time. We were trying to get some grant money to put sidewalks in there. So this is a very, very safety-oriented issue here that we're talking about children, grade school children, being able to go to school and walk down the street. Right now, some of them are having to cross the street, the middle of the street, with people trying to drop kids off, buses coming in. The school district has taken the buses off the street by clearing a parking lot that's in front of the gymnasium. But it's still very congested. Anybody that goes there and views it, and I have, and Jeff has been there, will immediately see the dire situation that we have there. So county-wise, it is very much a priority for safety of the children. I want to say that on Thursday the 21st at 10 a.m., Jeff, myself, and a lieutenant from the CHP and two of those officers, safety officers, will be meeting there at 10 a.m. in front of the school to go over options and have the CHP come up with some of their options that we can put together immediately, low cost, to alleviate some of it as we go forward, trying to get the funds and leverage the funds to put sidewalks in and make it a lot safer for these kids to go to school. I see Ben Stoppers out here and Sherry Roos. You two are obviously invited to be there if you want, 10 o'clock on September 21st, to go over those options and discuss them. Okay? We are working forward. It is on our Board of Supervisors agenda for the 12th of September, this coming September, this coming Tuesday. And we will be discussing at the board level options and funding for this project also. So, Tim would like to add, I see our CAO is here, if you'd like to add anything, or if you guys would like to speak on it when public comment period is up. Love to hear from you guys, what you have to say.
Is there any further council comment?
I have one question. It's been a while since I've been over there, since my sister was there. But that, if I remember right, that street, is there a way to temporarily close it during when the school hours at the beginning of the morning and then at night when they're getting picked up? Would CHP
Close it to traffic? The parents drive through
No,
there?
like close it to public traffic, somehow have one lane closed, half of the street closed, and then they can do a drop off. Or just a temporary closure. Like some schools have where the road is, there's a gate there, they close it off, and then only the school kids can go in there.
That's possible. If you want to meet with me afterwards, we can kind of discuss it, and then we can bring it up at the meeting with the CHP to get their view on it. I'm open to all options right now. We're open to anything that would help just alleviate right now immediately some of the congestion that we have here. So that's part of the reasons why we're meeting with the CHP. There's talk about a couple roads, Pine Street being turned into a one-way all the way to the highway. Also, Sierra Street it's one way for one block right now. We're talking about maybe making it one way for 2 blocks. So the traffic comes around. We're discussing all kinds of options, and I think with the CHP's input, because the highway's right there, that we'll come up with some solutions, immediate solutions, but certainly not long-term solutions that we're looking for. But I think we're headed in the right way. I think we'll succeed, hopefully, relatively soon.
In the short term, right now, I'm assuming that's why CHP is coming up there, but do we have a traffic officer that can potentially direct traffic on these times that we need it? Or is that something that the police might suggest?
That's certainly part of the conversation.
Okay. That would probably be a quick, easy fix for temporary.
It's been discussed.
Any further council comment? Seeing none, do we have public comment?
I had to write it down, all my stuff, so bear with me. I'm Sherry Roosh, School Board Trustee for Calaveras Unified School District. Thank you for getting this on the agenda so quickly. I so appreciate it. Amanda, great suggestion. I don't know if it'll work or not because of the people who live there. I don't know how well they would receive that we cut off their street, so we would have to have some way of doing that, but it's a great suggestion. Not quite sure, and I don't know, and forgive me for my ignorance, if the STIP money is available, if that's something that we can get shovel ready. I'm not sure how to get shovel ready, and I'm sure you will help us to do that. I'm not sure if District 10 can help us out with the funding. I know that it is not highway, so I don't know that if Caltrans will, because it's kind of a county area. I was also told that years ago, and I can find out exactly the information, that there was money that was set aside for Valley Springs specifically for sidewalk and pedestrians, and it was actually a proposition that was set aside. So I will find out exactly what proposition that was and if those funds still exist. Also, we are currently able to use the Vets Hall that they have allowed us until we get some solutions to use that where they tore down for parents to park, and we appreciate that very much. So that allows parents to park, go get their kid, come and take their car and go on, so that they're not just waiting. A lot of the problem is right now is that they have created gridlock in that area because they're waiting there for, half hour for their kids. And if they have 3 kids, then it's quite a process. And then I just wanted to ask, the prior planning that we had a conversation with Amber and Mr. Toffanelli and with Mr. Krovitz. I just want to know if anybody has investigated that prior planning, since we've been this route multiple times. I'd hate for all of that to be lost, so we don't have to start from ground zero. And I'll be out of town on the 21st, but I'll make sure Ben's there. Thank you.
Ben Stopper, District 5. I'll see if I can get that 10 o'clock off from work, so I can't promise I'll be there, but I'll...
You want me to write you a note?
That might help. As you say in your agenda packet, active transportation grant is extremely competitive grant to apply for. So I think it's good to keep our minds open and look for other avenues as you move forward. We appreciate everything you're doing with possibly looking at an ATP in the future. But as they say, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result sometimes can plead insanity. I think Gary's taken extra steps by meeting with the CHP, getting letters, getting possible solutions from them will help. But I think keeping our mind open to other sources of funding at the same time might help more, and broadening our percentage of possibly getting this resolution moving forward. I have to concur with Sherry. There's homes all along that area where you would put gates on. So it's, a lot of people are going to work at the same time kids are going to school. So it's a tough juggle, complete bottleneck there. I think if you all see the plans in the future or even stop by and actually see it during drop off or pickup, you'll fully understand the situation it's in. So thank you. And one question moving forward, when do you have to have all these applications in for the grant by?
Which the ATP grant?
Yeah.
They haven't released their call for projects yet, so
Okay.
that'll come in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, we're talking about.
So we aren't pressed on a timeline like next month. So that's all I'm curious on. Thank you very much.
Chair, I do have a comment. Over here. Magic wand, right? Has the school district and the trustees developed any kind of a letter of support or any kind of a call to discuss this at their level? So is the school district brought this before your trustees and written letters? So all of those letters, are they currently in our packets that we have as reference?
We had 200 signatures that
Could you come to the microphone, please, because it's on tape?
Yes, we have. The first time around when we first went out, there's a ringing here. When we first went out for the ATP. Thank you. We had done a resolution. We can do another one. It's not an issue. And we last time that we went through, we had 200 signatures from parents. We can get duplicate that again. But it's my knowledge that was still at Public Works. They still had those. So.
Okay, as long as we have that as record to help support what we're going to do.
We can get whatever you need.
Okay, thank you.
This also is an informational item. Is there any further public comment? Is there any further council comment? Okay. We look forward to seeing additional information coming back next month.
We will be back, this item will be back on the agenda next month.
Well, it'll be-
As part of the overall work program?
Overall work.
Well, I'll be bringing a contract award for consultant services in October. Yeah, and this will be part of that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, consideration of grant applications for fiscal year 17-18 SP1 Caltrans Planning Grant Program upcoming call for projects. Ms. Collins.
All right, thank you again. I'm sure you won't get tired of hearing my voice tonight. I included a lot in the staff report, and we talk a lot about these Caltrans Planning Grant Program. That's an annual program, and we always work with the city and county to get their priorities lists of needs, and then go after these grant funds. So I've listed here, the grants, the projects that we applied for in the last planning grant cycle, and only one, unfortunately, from that list, the Murphy's SR4 Complete Streets Corridor Plan and project prioritization was awarded. So we'll get started on that project this year, so hopefully this fall. Of the other projects that I listed, I kind of walked through kind of the status of that project, where we're at, and whether it should be resubmitted as an application in this upcoming call. So, we've talked about Senate Bill 1 and how, it's a new influx of money, and it's being kind of divided up amongst several different programs, and one of them is through Caltrans planning, and they're releasing an early call for projects for the Sustainable Communities grant program. They also are adding a new grant program for adaptation planning, I think, to address, climate change impacts, and then also emergency response. And, Carl can probably add more to that. So walking through kind of our past planning grants, I'm recommending and working with the city and county staff just resubmitting 2 grants. One is the Pope Street Class 1 Facility and Safe Routes to School Gap Fill Plan here in San Andreas. That's been, on the books for a while for a need for the community. And then the Capello Park and State Route 49 Active Transportation Plan. So there's definitely need in the northern portion of Angels Camp for additional planning for bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And that's a big gap for the city. So that's still a need, and so we still recommend applying for that. And then also just, seeking your direction to work with city and county staff to identify, if they have any needs for this new adaptation planning program. I know the county, has a lot of, emergency planning needs. So, if the county would like to put in an application, I'd be happy to work with county staff to get that ready for this call.
Okay, council comment. Public comment. Okay, so what we're being asked for is direction to continue on projects 2 and 5, plus if the county and the city ask for assistance, 2 sustainable projects, I didn't say that properly. 2 sustainable community planning grant applications, one for the county, one for the city, and potentially an adaptive planning grant application if requested. Is the council in agreement that these would be good projects to move forward with? That would be the Pope Street Class 1 Facility and Safe Routes to School project and the Capello Park 49 project.
Chair, would you like to poll the board on it, just for
Yes.
record?
Why don't we go ahead and do that? Do we have a consensus that that would be a good thing?
Yes.
Yes?
I have one question on the Pope Street. If we do that now, does that limit our options for having active transportation plan for the whole 49 corridor in San Andreas?
No, this will be a planning grant because we are just now completing the State Route 49 corridor study through San Andreas to prepare, projects for future, construction funds. This one is an actual, planning study specific to the Pope Street Class 1 facility because so far, right now, all we have on, our books and our bike ped master plan is just a Class 1 facility on Pope Street. So we need to define what that scope is and do some more conceptual planning on that project.
Okay, very good.
What does that do to item number 1? The Valley Springs.
So on the previous item, we discussed, and it's actually the gentleman had mentioned too, not doing the same thing over and over again. So, we tried this avenue of going after a planning grant, and then we expanded, the scope to include all, more of Valley Springs. Our new approach is to go kind of a separate path, utilizing COG OWP funds to hire a consultant to work with the community on this scope and engineering. Is that?
Okay.
So I'm sensing consensus with that response.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that there was an explanation so people knew what was going on.
Okay.
And I'd mentioned too, if there's interest from, your district in the future for a planning grant for all of Valley Springs, there's another call for projects coming out in January, so I'd be happy to work with the county on development of that application.
I think we have consensus that we should move forward in that direction with projects 2 and 5 plus the 2 sustainable as presented. Okay. Item number 8. Direction and discussion regarding the Calaveras Transit Program. Ms. Collins.
This item is being brought forward at the request of both the city and county. They both have recently expressed interest in exploring alternative organizational options for Calaveras Transit. More recently, I think there's been several factors that necessitated the county to have this discussion. I think recent impacts to the county general fund, transit performance, and their ability to meet mandatory standards, turnover and staffing, and then also upcoming expiration of the transit operations contract. So I think, there's this window of opportunity that's kind of opened up for the county to be able to reevaluate transit services and maybe if there's, potential for different management structure for transit. At the County Board of Supervisors meeting on August 29th, they brought this item forward and they voted on a motion to designate our 2 COG board members here and staff as liaisons to work with the COG to outline a transition strategy and bring recommendations back to the Board of Supervisors. And then last evening at the City Council meeting, they also voted on the same item and they appointed Linda Herman as the City Council representative and liaison on this committee. We had discussions, they were going to appoint 2 members, but we ran into, some discussions of having almost a full quorum of the COG board. So keeping, in the light of the county wanted to keep this an informal committee in kind of exploration of the feasibility of these options. So in that light, I think the city recognized that and just appointed 1 member to be a liaison. Moving forward and, what the COG's role is, we're really here just to provide the resources to accomplish what the city and county would want to accomplish through this process and to maybe, something that could result in improved efficiencies of the transit system. As the council's aware, we've had, many discussions in the past on transit performance. Through our last short-range transit plan, we also had a discussion and evaluation of alternative organizational options. So I think we'll kind of take that work that they did in looking at peer agencies of, organizational structures that have the potential to improve transit operations and efficiencies. Although, and I write in my staff report that an organizational structure is not known at this time, I think if the city and county wish to, one option is a joint powers agency that creates a transit agency. There'd be opportunities for shared COG staffing and then a shared, responsibility for this COG board, as is done in Tuolumne County, that for their transit system, they share it with the Tuolumne County Transportation Commission. So there's a lot of different examples of different structures out there. So I think, staff is requesting your direction to work with city and county on this and to hire a consultant to help facilitate this process and then develop a transition plan, once the city and county have recommended a direction.
Well, our committee met today, which consisted of Jeff, Tim, myself, and Dennis. And we thought the best thing to do was, and I'm glad to hear the city had met and came up with a person to represent. We thought before we go forward with anything, first would to have a meeting with the city, our committee, and a staff member of COG to go over all the options, what we need to look at to do to transition, any transition at all. Like you brought up, how do other transportation districts handle it, other counties, and go down that path before we make a presentation to this board and to the Board of Supervisors and to the City Council, and go down that path. By no means are we saying, and did we state today, that this is the only option. It could still stay where it's at. It just depends on what we are going to come up with the transition and how that's going to look, how long it's going to take, and exactly what type of transportation authority are we going to come out of to run the transportation. So I think that's what needs to be done. I think that's what we discussed today. At least having a meeting sometime next week, if it's possible, with the city, with COG staff, and Dennis and I, and Tim and Jeff, and at least discuss the options.
I would even add if the city manager, Ms. Kelly, could be involved as well in that conversation. Additionally, this is a window in time, and it's an opportunity to just take a complete look and vet out all of our options. And I think at some point that we want to add in, once we get that kind of a discussion completed, add in all of the other variables that would be there, whether it's Silver Streak, whether it's the senior services. Look at everybody and say, what role do they play? How does this all work on a larger sphere besides just the city and the county, so that everybody can have some kind of a voice in the discussion, and we can hear from them as well. So there's pieces to be played out yet. This is just the beginning. I don't even see this as something that we are going to be able to move through in the next 90 days. It may take 6 months. It really depends on how thoroughly do we want to look at it. And the more that we look at it and have those complete discussions, the better chance that we're going to have a good rational decision in the end. That it's not built on emotion, it's built upon what we know is what works. And ultimately what we want is to be able to recover as much of those funds as possible and not have to give them anything back to the state because we didn't perform. So this is step one or step two here, and these are baby steps. But the more that we can have those complete discussions, the better chance we're going to have a good result.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify that the direction of the agenda item that was given to us tonight, along with the history of how we've looked at transit over the last 5 years, we did spend, I want to say $30,000-$40,000 on a consultant several years ago. I think prior to you serving on the board, Mr. Mills. I think you may have been here when Cliff Chambers did a presentation on governance, maybe not. We've had previous efforts and work done on, and I don't want to confuse the operations with the overall administration of transit. And this is an administration of transit question right now. We've had some studies done on that in the past. What I see staff asking for is the opportunity to facilitate what your group is trying to accomplish with a consultant who does do this all the time. Again, and we have funding, but what staff is looking for is the direction to release a request for proposal to get consultant services now, in order to start moving this process forward, not waiting 90 days, not waiting 6 months. I certainly have full respect for the board and for the city to work in this process. And if you guys are willing to meet next week, I think that's excellent. What I don't want to see happen is this be pushed down the road and pushed down the road yet more again. So what staff has, I think, outlined here as an agenda item in asking for an RFP to create a consultant services to help facilitate this process, I think works in harmony with this subgroup that you guys have created from the Board of Supervisors, inclusive with the City of Angels. And I think if anything, perhaps having this consultant come on board to work with your committee even would be beneficial, including staff from the COG. So what I'm hearing you say, and then where I'm seeing with the agenda was, I want to make sure we didn't come off track. I would like to see a consultant services RFP get issued to see this process move forward with full inclusion of the city and county in this process.
I would absolutely support a facilitator, and I think it's critical for time reasons to get that RFP out and get moving on it. I fully agree with that. I would also like to look at what the previous work was done when this was brought up before. I kind of get that background of what that conversation looked like. I think it may have no value, it may have some value, but let's at least have it as part of what we talk about. When the facilitator is available, then we can have those more complete discussions. But I think these are just initial discussions at this phase,
Thank you.
and to try to just see what the tracks are, and to be able to look at all of them and be sure that we haven't missed anything in this discussion.
Well, I think on that note, I think the word transition or relinquish might be strong for where we're at right now. And, as John alluded to, I think we're looking to just hire consultant services for facilitation of these discussions and whatever process the county or city would like to go through. And that doesn't have to be relinquishing, it might be just restructuring the management of the system within the county.
Yeah, and that's why I say I think before, we can certainly send out for an RFP for a consultant, but at this point, I think initially we need to get the city and county together and sit down and discuss if we're all on the same page where we're at first. And certainly we can send out, we can get together an RFP before we send it out. I think the committee that's been formed needs to meet and have that discussion. It may be that we're not all on the same page. It may be that we have some other route we want to go. We need to have that discussion first, I think. I agree, in my opinion. And then that's why I say as early as next week. Certainly prepare the RFP, in my opinion, and then after we meet, we can discuss it going forward from there. That's my opinion. I have 6 other people here on the board that have to confer.
I guess the way I'm seeing it right now is I'm looking to us as a COG to move forward with this process, as we're responsible for both the management of the funds as they come to the county and city through us as an agency, and then working with you as a subgroup on understanding and clarifying directions and possibilities down the road. I guess where I'm trying not to see this go is the subcommittee being the vetting agency for all the options. I think it's an opportunity for the city and the county to communicate in a very positive fashion to make sure you are on the same page. But I think the responsibility for approving staff at the COG level to issue an RFP, to develop an RFP, has to come from this board, not from the subcommittee.
I don't disagree with you, John, but I think this board needs to listen to what direction that subcommittee has come up with.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
And your feeling is that committee is not quite there yet to
I think we're just at the initial stages. It was vetted at the Board of Supervisors, and Dennis and I were approved for a subcommittee along with Tim and Jeff, and last night at the city. So we haven't even had an opportunity to meet. It seems to me that we're putting the cart ahead of the horse. Certainly I'm in favor of preparing the RFP, But if it has to come back next month at the next meeting to be approved by the board, this board, then so be it. But I'm not, if we're in a big rush to send out an RFP, what are we preparing an RFP for? We haven't had a discussion at a level to find what parameters we're looking for. And what type of transition, if at all, we're going to go through.
For the facilitator, is that kind of the point of what they're gonna do? Is help us, what Gary said, get to that, or is it to facilitate after we've discussed? I guess that's where I'm kind of confused. Is it to help us get through the process, or is it helping us once we decide what we want and then go through the process?
Yeah, I think you can look to the facilitator to help you through this process of evaluating, what are feasible options, what are your goals for this process, and then looking at those options and, then bringing back recommendations to city and county, and then moving forward at that next step of a transition plan, and then what needs to happen in development of whatever this might look like.
And you were telling me this was done before, a couple of years ago?
Several years ago, we looked at how the performance of the transit system was being provided to our citizens, and we spent, I want to say, between $30,000 and $40,000 for Cliff Chambers of Mobility Management, I think was his company, to actually provide a number of alternatives several years ago, options for the transit system in Calaveras County. That's not part of this discussion tonight, only in light of the fact that we've done this before, and that's still a report that we've done in the past, in the recent past, that may be part of what your committee and or the facilitator that we would hire would want to incorporate as review product to move forward with new recommendations today. The direction I'm hearing is that certainly the committee would like an opportunity to meet and get together and talk. I think regarding the preparation of an RFP, COG staff understands what they're looking for with respect to getting a transportation planner in place to help us look at where we're at. The board motion from August 29th, which was to create your subcommittee to liaison with the COG to understand where we should go forward. And we're, again, being respectful of the county, trying to make sure that we're working exactly with what you guys would like to do. Both of you two, in addition to being liaisons, are also county board members. So you were there at that meeting, understanding what the county wanted to do. I also want to be respectful of the city because they have a very vested interest in seeing how transit performs for the citizens, not just of Angels Camp, but how people can get into and out of Angels Camp utilizing transit as well. So having said that, I think staff would like to know either this board is supportive at this point of creating an RFP. I understand if they create an RFP before we issue an RFP, that would be a board resolution to issue that contract, or to issue that RFP.
No, I don't need a resolution, but, we don't have the funding in the OWP, so it would be, the next month we're bringing an OWP amendment, and that's an opportunity to add the funds for this work. And then I would, bring forward a recommendation for contract award. So I think we're just trying to fit in with this window of opportunity that the county was discussing. So COG staff just, trying to move as quickly as the county needs us to move. And if you need us to slow down, we'll slow down.
I would say the best thing to do here is just to understand what the timeline might be, and if everybody can know what that is, then you'd be best able to deal with it. If we can get an initial meeting with the city and the county and the staff members together next week, by the time that we get to the October meeting, we will probably have that direction clearly in our head as to what we want. I am a trained facilitator. I wouldn't even begin to do this because it's that important that we not derail. And without a facilitator present at meetings, it could easily derail us, or we could be focusing on areas that really have no end result. So a facilitator is critical, but I don't believe in the initial meeting it's critical. It will be in any subsequent meetings going forward to be sure that we stay on a particular track or we have a destination in mind. So yes, I think that getting this initial together, but not being ready to issue it until we have had this discussion, and then in October, we can have staff prepared to issue it and roll, and get it rolling, if that makes sense.
That does. I think what we're hearing is a consensus towards staff, COG staff, to go ahead and develop the RFP and incorporate it in the OWP amendment of October, as you were
Yes.
recommending.
I would move in that direction.
I would too.
Any further council comment? Any public comment? Okay, you have your direction. Item number 9, the county report, including an update on the Calaveras County CIP projects funded through COG.
Jeff Kravitz, Public Works, Calaveras County. No real changes other than progress on the projects that we are working on. Doing our bridges, getting our environmental documents approved. I think we've cleared 4 since the last meeting. Really, if you've got questions specific to any projects that we're working on, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any council questions?
Comment? Thank you for your attendance this morning at EPOC. It was very beneficial for them to get that update directly from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, as part of the capital improvement backup on the spreadsheet, it gives the total invoice to date. The total invoice to date on the 1226 CMAC construction, $1 million budgeted is 0.
I didn't print that out, but on that particular project, my understanding is that we've closed it, and we've completed all invoicing and paperwork through Caltrans.
Okay.
So it might be a case where our paperwork isn't caught up.
Okay. That's all I had. I think we're good.
Thanks.
Transit report. Update on CIP projects funded through COG. Mr. Kravitz.
I'm back. In terms of transit, we have resubmitted and circulated the operations contract, the RFP, and added some items in there to address the potential for a change in structure, administrative structure to transit. And we are awaiting comments. We got comments back from Caltrans within a couple of days, and we're waiting comments from our partners. But we feel that we need to push forward with that, regardless of the direction that is going, because we do have an existing contract that will be expiring, and it'll take a number of months to put a new one in place and to be able to do an effective transition. Additionally, you all know that we closed out the intercity route, and we have an item in front of the board for the next agenda to take that intercity bus and give it back to Caltrans as was requested. One less capital asset. Questions? Okay.
No, Hannah,
Do we have a city report?
Don't know.
you calling?
Maybe I can check and make the email. Nope, I don't know.
We have no city report, so therefore,
I think Amber caught the biggest news for the city report earlier. So I think that's the main
With no
thing.
city representative
Should-
present,
yeah.
we'll let you come up as council.
1.9 million.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that was actually a
That's
very
our
nice.
report.
Okay, that is a report.
but they've invoiced 0 to date on all their projects.
Similar through Director Krovitz's response, we need to talk to our partners and make sure they update the paperwork that gets this up to date for us as well. Caltrans,
I know.
Mr. Baker.
I had a conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things this time. There is a new notice of funding opportunity for Tiger, Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery.
Gary, can you say that one more time?
Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery, Tiger. They started under the ARA program. The applications are due October 16th. Some of the language, the fiscal year 2017 Tiger program will give special consideration to projects which emphasize improved access to reliable, safe, and affordable transportation for communities in rural areas, such as projects that improve infrastructure condition, address public health and safety, promote regional connectivity, or facilitate economic growth or competitiveness. So those are a few bells that I think we could possibly ring on.
Gary, are some of the bridge projects that Public Works has identified as underfunded or not funded, would any of those qualify under the Tiger program?
Under Tiger, got to be careful. It's a 80-20 split for urban areas. There is no match requirement for rural areas, but any match you can provide improves your competitiveness. So typically under the Highway Bridge Program, it's federal money, so you can't match federal with federal. I'm not sure that you get much out of it in that kind of case. This is, I believe, Wagon Trail's been submitted numerous times before, and this is a big pot with, everybody else in it. So, on the other hand, if they're looking for rural and they're looking for connectivity, and we kind of have a gap fill project, there's a lot of good things in that language in terms of what Wagon Trail. Just some things following up on things from the board. The truck passing and parking issues in Angels Camp. We brought those to the project team for a couple of projects that we've got going. One of them is operational improvements on 49 at 4 and 49. Initially, that's kind of scoped as the two roundabouts, one at 4 and 49, the other somewhere further over by Francis Street. It's not determined at this point. That's funded under the shop, and that's just at the project initiation stage. So in terms of the parking, we're kind of looking at whether we can fit that into that scope. The passing lane may fit better under the city's PID that we're looking at for the access to 4, either at Angel Oaks or Foundry Lane. So we have to kind of work. We've got a lot of projects cooking in a small amount of space in Angels Camp. We already had an ADA project that we're looking at improvements for the most part between 4 and 49 going south towards downtown. That one is really oriented towards sidewalks that have too much cross slope, ramps that don't meet specs, that don't have the yellow domes and things like that we always go through and try to fix. Now that the city has roughly a gap fill sidewalk project
funded under the ATP. We need to try to coordinate those, make sure that, you know, we're not planning the same thing, and also coordinate the schedules for that. Those programs move at slightly different speeds. That also fits in with looking at a roundabout at 4 and 49. If we're going to look at the approach going south from 4 and 49, we would want that a little bit nailed down, because the sidewalks behave somewhat differently when you're working with a roundabout than they do under the existing conditions. If you were to just, you know, do the infill where there's no sidewalk. Through all of that, there's a question of who needs what right away, and that greatly affects the timing of when we can get things done. So there's a whole bunch of coordination to be done through all of those projects. So those comments are taken, and we're doing our best to try to fit them in where we can. The other issue coming up that we're going to have to coordinate more with the city on is the bridge at South 4 and 49. We're looking at replacing our bridge. The city has replacement of the city's bridge in the RTP funded under the Highway Bridge Program. So you will work with the city in any way it wants to go, but you know, the previous study of how to work with replacing those bridges included reconfiguring the intersection. It's not really a good idea to spend the money to replace any of those bridges without figuring out how to address the geometry. So that's a potential for partnership between the city and Caltrans. The last thing I wanted to bring up was just a reminder in talking about applications for the ATP, talking about the planning grants, talking about the Valley Springs School. A huge component of the active transportation program is what we call the non-infrastructure part. It's not about the capital improvements, it's about
planning and getting it prepped for construction.
So that they want to see a commitment from the school to carry through and you know, work through the rest of that. And that's one of the benefits of trying to do that through the grant program, is to make sure that you get all of that. So
yeah, I'm aware it's not a construction grant at all. It's a planning and stage grant.
well, the ATP the active transportation program can do construction, and it can do planning, and they have what they call non-infrastructure grants also that don't actually have a capital improvement. So it's very flexible.
But in order for it to get to the construction phase, you have to have the planning and all ready to go.
Yes. So
And then it may not even be chosen at that time either because of the competition.
So there's two different things. One is our sustainable planning grants under Caltrans.
Mm-hmm.
The ATP is money through the CTC. So the ATP, most of the money goes towards construction, but it can also be used for planning for safe routes to school or for active transportation plans. But in taking the approach of working with the community, not working under a grant, don't forget about trying to address that non-infrastructure side, because when they look at safe routes to school, they want to see that commitment from the school that they're going to follow through. It's not, the point isn't just to make it safer, it's also to make it so people actually walk to school. That is the goal of the program. The other concern I just want to relay, and I've been trying to discuss this more, is that in looking at success rates under active transportation program applications, having the bike ped and safe routes to school plan that was produced by the COG, not adopted by the county, is not supportive of the county getting those grants. Having to put that in an application, saying that essentially is not a good sign. So when we work on these plans, when we work together and partner on them, they also have to be adopted. So
Do we need to follow up with you guys to get that adopted?
We need to look at that.
Isn't that already folded into the general plan that hasn't been approved yet?
Into the mobility plan?
I think it is.
Was that folded into the mobility plan? I don't think so.
I think it's a standalone element.
Yeah, I don't think it was part of that mobility plan.
So understand that there's a discussion to have about the various contexts of what kind of improvements you want to do where. But saying that we're all for it at the school here, but then not adopting the plan to address it, system-wide, is a concern. So that's all I have, unless there's questions.
We need to look for that so we can bring it back to the board. I think it's a new board now. If I can meet with you to go over that.
I have one question. What is the timeline for redoing the road on South Main Street 49 heading to Sonora with a road caved in?
I don't know, but
Okay.
I'll
I'm just curious. I think everyone's getting used to it, but I'm just curious what
I need to do some
what
research.
was going on.
So
Okay.
I already got a note on it. I'll look into it. Yeah, clearly it's a priority for the community. Okay. Thank you.
Carl, thank you.
Thanks, Carl.
Next agenda item is item number 13, council reports. Councilmember Immunities.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Mills.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment?
I guess that concludes the council comments. Staff reports. Ms. Raggio, you have some paperwork here?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, I just included for the council pretty detailed, and I won't go through anything unless you have questions. I'm at this moment just letting you know what's going on, what's been completed, what we're currently working on, and, things to look forward that will be upcoming.
All right. Great report.
With that said, the adjournment of this meeting will conclude, and we'll have the next meeting on October 4th at 5:30 here in this chambers. Thank you.